Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to GoLocal Live here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm your host, Rachel Nunes. Our first guest today, Judge Bob Flanders, GOP nominee for Senate here in Rhode Island. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for joining us. So, big news today. Bobby Nardolillo has stepped down from the race following your nomination. What was your initial reaction?
Well, I was surprised, but gratified that he had decided to do that. I think it was a very statesmanlike thing for him to do. I give him a lot of credit. He fought a good campaign, and I think he has a bright future as a politician in the state. But it certainly clears the field here and enables me to concentrate on the main event, which is Senator Whitehouse and making sure that my message can get out there without being waylaid for the next couple of months in a primary, which is very late in Rhode Island.
Absolutely, yes. It's actually the latest in the country, as I learned just this past week. So what are the main issues that you're running on for your campaign?
Well, I think I'm running on trying to serve Rhode Island interests. I think we've been neglected for too long. We've got an all-Republican Congress, an all-Republican executive branch. It would help Rhode Island, in my opinion, to have at least one person down there in the same party as the ones that are controlling the Congress and the executive branch. And I think that's going to continue. And so I think we need an advocate for the things that most Rhode Islanders are concerned about. Healthcare, for example.
Absolutely.
Roads and bridges, infrastructure of all sorts, immigration. These are issues that need both sides to work together and stop all the partisanship, and let's get down to work and get something done for people here in the state.
So you believe the current Senator Whitehouse has been remiss in
he's been a hyper-partisan. He's really towing the Senator Schumer Pelosi line. He's a obstructionist, in my opinion, and he's not helping to get things done. Look, you're gonna need to compromise in this Congress. Especially in the Senate, and we've got too many issues that are hanging fire without coming to some resolution that would be helpful on all these fronts that matter to most people and the things they talk about at the dinner table. So I want to work for the average working Rhode Islander, for small businesses, and to help Rhode Island get to a better place. And
so some of the really major issues that have been addressed in our country right now, particularly the opioid crisis, it seems every day there's new truly saddening statistics about the number of overdoses and the availability of these drugs. What do you think should be done to help curb the crisis?
Well, the first thing that needs to be done is to repeal the legislation that unfortunately Senator Whitehouse sponsored, which gutted the Drug Enforcement Agency's authority to shut down these pill mills that were flooding the market with these addictive substances. We need to get that off the books and restore the authority there. But beyond that, we need to do a comprehensive education initiative to let people know what the crisis is all about, how they can deal with it. We need to make sure doctors and emergency rooms have the tools and medicines they need to combat overdoses. It's got to be a comprehensive campaign. It should be something we should work together on a bipartisan basis.
Absolutely.
And it's killing an average of 6 Rhode Islanders a week. It's a devastating situation, particularly among young people. And so we need to do everything we can to conquer this terrible crisis.
And you believe it's a crisis better addressed at the national level than individually on the state levels at this point?
Well, I don't criticize the states for wanting to do things, but I think we need, because it's a national issue, I think we need the national muscle and national money to help alleviate the crisis.
Absolutely. And what are some of the other major issues you'd like to address?
Well, certainly health care. We still don't have a better solution to Obamacare. The premiums continue to go up. Drug prices are through the roof. Seniors are getting hit particularly hard. We need to free up Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices. They've got enormous leveraging authority. We need to enable people to buy insurance plans across state lines. In short, we need to introduce more competition into the market.
Okay.
Senator Whitehouse and Senator Sanders, Bernie Sanders, are all in favor of a government Medicare program for everybody. I think that's the wrong way to go. It's incredibly expensive to do that, among other things. I think a better way is to introduce more competition into the existing system and lower drug prices and have more transparency about results and pricing so that people can do the same thing that they do with auto insurance and home insurance and buying their health insurance.
And as we had some really big news coming up this past week with the U.S. Supreme Court, first being that landmark decision being made over the power of labor unions. What were your thoughts on the decision? Do you think here in Rhode Island will that benefit workers, or do you think in the long run it will be detrimental?
No, I think it will definitely benefit workers because what this does is it frees them up to make decisions on their own without being forced to contribute to unions and causes and beliefs and activities that they don't support. So this is in the interest of free speech to have something like this done. And so I think workers who don't want to pay union dues or don't want to contribute to organizations such as that will now have the freedom to do so without being forced to do it. And I think that's consistent with the history of Rhode Island. This is the place of Roger Williams with sole liberty. People should have freedom of conscience to do as they please within law. And so I think this is consistent with that.
Very well said. And the other arguably larger news that came out just yesterday, I believe, was that Justice Kennedy's announced his retirement, which means President Trump's going to have the opportunity to put a second person on the Supreme Court, which is almost unprecedented in this time. It seems we've had the same court in place for decades. What implications do you think that will have?
Well, Justice Kennedy was a so-called swing vote. He voted mostly with the so-called conservative wing of the court, but he also authored opinions on gay marriage, preserving reproductive rights for women, abortion rights. So he was often a critical fifth vote for one camp or the other.
Absolutely,
on the court.
yeah.
So this is a very important appointment for the president, and I think the Republicans, of course, are going to try and put on somebody like a Neil Gorsuch again, who will be a reliably conservative vote, and the Democrats will try and slow walk whatever nomination comes forward to try and wait until the midterm elections in the hope that they'll pick up seats in either the Senate or the House of Representatives. But with a majority vote now enabling an appointment to be confirmed in the Senate, it seems to me that the Republicans are going to swiftly make a nomination from the list that President Trump already prepared, and will not waste any time confirming that justice.
What do you think would be the best choice for the Supreme Court at this time? Another Justice Kennedy who kind of can be, in terms of a party, unreliable, or someone who's more aligned with one party or another? Well,
I would hope that it would be someone who is a constitutionalist, that doesn't invent rights that aren't in the Constitution. I believe that it's good to have somebody who is open to being persuaded, that doesn't come in with views that are so rigid and so predictable that that they're always in one side or the other.
True, because their job is to interpret the Constitution, not to just come in with a set decision already.
Right, and the Constitution, as we all know, has these majestic generalities like due process, equal protection of the law. So
who really knows what exactly that means?
So precedent means a lot. So yeah, but I think you want someone who's had a track record of competence, that people can have faith in, that he's not going to be a political judge or a politician in robes, but somebody who's a true jurist who will do a good faith interpretation of the Constitution.
Absolutely. Very, very well said.
Thank you.
And so turning back to your campaign, what are the next steps now that you don't, like you said, you don't have to worry about a primary coming up in September? What are your next steps going to be until the election in November?
Well, as I say, now I'm free to really concentrate on the issues between Senator Whitehouse and myself. I want to continue to reach out to voters. I need to make sure that people in this state know who I am, know what my background is, know what my track record is, know what my qualifications are, and I need to do the fundraising that will enable me to get my message out there, to be on TV, and do all the things you need to do to be an effective and viable candidate today. So I'm going to be a busy person. I've got a great staff, a great campaign. So I'm going to be all over the state and all over the issues as we get closer to the big day in November.
And so you said your main thing is to get out your who you are and what you're all about. What's the number one thing you'd like the Rhode Island voter to know about you as a candidate?
I think the thing I want them to know is that I come from a very humble background. Yes, I went to an Ivy League school, but I did so on a financial aid scholarship. Yes, I went to Harvard Law School, but I had to work my way through both of those institutions. I was a garbage man in my hometown. I was a mattress bagger in a factory. I was a floor sweeper, a truck driver. So I've done a lot of manual labor jobs. I come from a family where I was the first to graduate from college. So I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck, and I think I can identify with the struggles of average working Rhode Islanders and small businesses. I've been a small businessman myself. I founded my own law firm. So I can identify with that whole ethos here in Rhode Island, and so I want people to know that about me. Forget about the Harvard, the Brown. This is a guy who came from nothing, relatively speaking, and was able to be successful through hard work and education. And now I want to give back to a state that's been so good to me.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Bob Flanders, the GOP nominee for U.S. Senate. Keep an eye out for him. He'll be all over the state, I'm sure. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Rachel. Delighted.
And stay with us. We'll be right back here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm your GoLocal host, Rachel Nunes. Welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm your GoLocal Live host, Rachel Nunes, here with Don Beener, owner of Copacetic Jewelry here in Providence. Welcome to the program. So you're located right around the corner here,
right
just
around the corner.
Hop, skip, and a jump away.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your business.
Well, I've been around for 33 years. I was in the arcade for 23 years, and then it closed. And then I found a place right over here on Peck Street, right nearby, so I could move everything over there pretty quickly.
Quick move.
Yes, and I carry about 100 artists in the store. About 25 are local people that make things at home and bring them in on consignment. And I do a lot of repairs. I fix things that other people don't fix. I fix fine jewelry, silver, costume jewelry, things like that.
What kind of repairs do you generally make?
Usually it's, well, I can't say it's even usual because people know that I do unusual things, and so the word gets around and they bring in things that you wouldn't think anybody would even bother fixing. But more precious than gold, as the saying goes, is the sentimental value that people have with jewelry. So
absolutely.
I'll pretty much try to fix anything.
Great. And so do you make any of the jewelry yourself?
I used to, but I had a pretty major burglary in the arcade. I lost the whole store in 2006, and I lost the rest of the things that I made and 2 more burglaries over here on Peck Street. So,
Very unfortunate.
luckily I have a passion for fixing things, so I'd rather do that than make something new.
It is very gratifying to make something whole again, that
Absolutely.
especially when someone else can't.
Yeah,
to be
and people have
that one
things that are-
person who can fix
People
it.
have things that are very precious to them, like a little bracelet right there.
True. I brought in this bracelet just the other day, and here it is right here, little copper bracelet, and I brought it in, and he made it look beautiful and new again. So.
And now I've coated it,
Absolutely.
so maybe it'll stay that way.
And it'll stay that way now.
Well,
so many
hopefully.
thanks to you.
I'm going to check back and make sure it works.
So what got you into jewelry making? It's not really something you can go to college and major in jewelry.
I had a friend that paid a lot of money to go to college for it.
Oh, so it is a college program.
It is wherever he went. I forget where he went. It was a lot of years ago. And I lived up in the mountains with a bunch of people, and he would make his jewelry, and I would look over his shoulder. And he told me, which ended up being true, that all you have to do is learn how to solder, and pretty much then you can make anything that you want. And he
That's
paid
true.
a lot of money to go through all these other things, the history of jewelry and all this, and he just learned how to solder, and I learned from him and started making things.
So when did you first learn?
That was 1970. Yeah, and I'd take a little piece of black velvet and go to the University of Colorado and put it out with all these little rings on it and sell to the students, and got a little store there. And then I stopped doing it for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And then I picked it up again.
Well, we're very glad that you did. What would you say is your favorite, back when you did make things, what was your favorite thing to make?
I like to make like little silver rings, just really neat little designs that you could wear. And I made all kinds of paraphernalia because that was the drug days in Boulder, and I guess now it is again. But anyway, I'd make pipes out of silver and put stones on them and everything. So there were a lot of fun things that I made.
It sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like there's really a lot of, especially with more artistic jewelry like that, you just make whatever you feel like, which is pretty fun.
A lot of the artists that I had when I opened up the store back in 1985 that were RISD students, I still have their work because they're always reinventing themselves. You don't always have to get new artists because they're always making new things. So
that's really cool the way it supports the community that way, and
Yeah.
local artists.
Yeah,
You can
it
help
is
promote
nice.
their work.
And I've been on gallery night ever since it opened, so that's a nice thing to have where people go around to all the different galleries. So
That's really cool. And so what would you say to someone who's, let's say, considering a gift or maybe an engagement ring? What would you say to convince them, go with the handmade, go with locally sourced as opposed to your run-of-the-mill jewelry chain store?
Luckily, when they come in, they can see that, oh, this isn't just expensive things, like let me impress whoever I'm buying a gift for with something expensive. And they know, and I always say, that you get them something that's unique and it's appreciated a lot more than something that's just expensive. You get something really personalized. So they love supporting artists. So it kind of has worked out. And a lot of things, the online has ruined so many businesses, but luckily I have unique enough things that they can't go online and find them. So.
That's true, because especially like places like Etsy, you can find pretty much anything you want with the right keywords, I guess, especially when it comes to jewelry and handmade crafts like that. Would you say that's had a big impact on local stores like yours?
Well, it's made it so they can go there and see things, but there's nothing, and to many people it's still true, they need to try it on, they need to look at it, they need to feel it, and so luckily they can do that in my store.
That's true. Jewelry is a very personal thing, and you never really know till you try it on.
And many people come in to buy gifts, and I just tell them to look around and see what looks like the person that they're buying for, because they'll look around, and then they'll go, oh, I want that. And it's like they know right away what looks like the person.
So in your store, you'll notice there's cases of fascinating jewelry everywhere, but there's also a lot of other seemingly random things. You have your wall of clocks, you have some travel type knickknacks. What?
And a lot of gadgets.
Yeah, what's the selection process for that?
And I tell people, and it's true, I've got to control myself because I like gadgets and toys. And so I don't want to become a gadget and toy store with some jewelry, because if I do it too much, that's what'll happen. So, you know, I have things like toilet lights and faucet lights and slinkies and pens and
things you never knew you needed.
Right, and people always have somebody else to buy something for, so they come in and they go, "Oh man, I'd like to get this for my child," or whatever it is.
And so the name copacetic, where does that come from?
You know, there's even debate about where it comes from. Some people say it's a old colloquialism, be from the 1930s, from Bojangles or whatever, that everything's copacetic, everything's cool, everything's fine.
I think it describes your shop very, very well. Everything's fun and cool there.
I try to keep it that way. Yeah.
So how many local artists did you say you have right now?
About 25. And there's some people that I haven't even seen for 15, 20 years that have money in their file, because I always give them cash and put it in their file. And I can't contact them, I can't find them on Facebook, and I'm amazed that people just leave things and leave. But
forget that they...
But I keep the money in the file, because I know if I spend it, they'll come walking in. And so it's like I just kept it there over the decades.
You never know who'll come back.
That's right.
So what would you say has been like if there's like a standout of the biggest repair you made, or the most dramatic improvement?
Gosh.
Is there a standout?
Well, it stands out for people that come in with something precious.
Of course,
somebody else might look at it and go, why even bother fixing that? But to take it and make it all better again, and they pick it up and to have them look at it and go, oh, thank you, because my mother passed away and she left me this and it was broken, and then I felt so bad, and now you fixed it. And so
it really is.
Those are really the precious.
It's a great feeling to be able to help people in that way. I know when you fixed mine, it made my day.
There you go.
It was just a quick little buff, but made my day.
Good.
So what kind of tools do you use besides to do your work?
Well, let me just grab this camera, walk around the corner, and I'll show you my back room, because it's got all these different, I've got
bits
these
and
rotating
bobbles.
things with it, and somehow I know where things are. I might not remember somebody's name when they come in, but I'll know where a certain thing is to fix something in my back room. So it's quite a repair shop in the back.
I'm sure it is, and that's always the best way to do it is, well, I know it's in here somewhere, and if I get rid of it, then I'll need it.
That's right. That's a hoarder's philosophy.
True, there's a fine line. There's a fine line. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your store or what you do besides come check it out for yourself? It's a truly unique experience.
Yeah, and just that I'm there, and I don't really advertise, so people can discover me. So,
can people make purchases online?
They can, and they can go online and look. Mostly on Facebook. I post the pictures on there. Of what I have.
Well, check it out. Copacetic Jewelry, right around the corner here in Providence. Thanks so much for being with us today, Don Beener, owner of Copacetic Jewelry. Thanks so much. We'll be right back here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm your host, Rachel Nunes. Welcome back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. For GoLocal Live, I'm your host, Rachel Nunes. Here with us now is Dr. Vaughn Calhoun from Becker College's
How's it going?
College of Business Administration. Here to talk to us about a fascinating new major being offered at the college, esports.
Yes.
Now, I know a lot of us don't even really know what that is. When you think sports and video games, it doesn't really seem like it overlaps that much. So tell us a little bit it's really a booming industry right now.
Yes, yeah.
What is esports?
Yeah, great question. Esports is something, as you said, something so brand new. Maybe over the past 5 years has gained a lot of national traction. But just think about any NFL football game, NBA basketball game, but instead of the basketball players or football players, gamers. Right, so it's the same type of fanfare, the broadcast, the journalism, and just that competition. And over the past about 5 years or so, it went from this sort of niche, offering to mainstream.
Absolutely. I know when I was in college about 1.5 years ago, my roommates were watching the finals on TBS, and I was like, what even is this? I didn't know this was a thing, but it's on these big national networks, so it's really taken off.
Right. I mean, it's so crazy. When you think about just the sheer numbers of it, right? So over 900 million in revenue last year worldwide, and 375 come stateside, and 60 million in ticket sales, and in fact, they're looking to go over $1 billion by 2020 as a whole industry. So one of the reasons driving this is eyeballs, essentially, right? So just like your friends are watching it, so are so many other people, right? So now instead of just hardware companies, software companies, tech companies, now you're getting mainstream consumer brands, Coca-Cola, Audi, Buffalo Wild Wings. I mean, all these folks are pumping so much money into it, which makes it just insane.
So we're really at the level of a professional sport now.
Pretty much, so you can think about just the gamers, which they're called athletes, at the pro level, right? So now these athletes actually have trainers, and they do weightlifting, they do cardio, they have, it's crazy, right? But this is how the industry's turning because there's so much money to be made and so much folks looking at it. Now you got to be at peak physical fitness when you're literally training 8-12 hours a day to play a video game.
This isn't just sitting at home playing video games. This is a whole different plane.
Yeah, this year is like you think of people playing basketball on the playground versus people playing at Staples Center or TD Gardens, right? So these gamers are the ones at that very top slice, right? Now everyone can play it, but at that level, very few can do what they do.
It's a whole different game. So tell us a little bit about the major itself. If I'm correct, it's esports management, correct? It's not how to be an esports athlete.
Yes and no, in the sense that we do offer an esports varsity team, but that's separate from the esports management major. So I want to make that clear. There's two separate tracks, right? So the esports management major, it's a business major. So think about the business side of esports, right? So what we do is we break it down into 3 different buckets, right? So students will come in and they'll take business courses, right? So they'll get their finance, their accounting, their marketing, then also take game design courses, right? Because we have
programming type?
Yeah, so it will be like game programming, game art, so they have a foundation of what game is, and then they'll take their specific esport management courses, which are 10 courses based on marketing, event planning, management, sales, all the way to their capstone courses. So they're getting a full plethora of those 3 different buckets.
All right, that's really fascinating. And so once you graduate with that degree, you can use that to work with athletes as a manager of an athlete?
So yes and no. So because this industry is so young and it's still booming, we're still trying to figure out how this industry is going to grow and where it's going to go to. So what we want to do is make a very cross-functional student in the sense that they can go into these different tracks, whether they're managing a team, whether they're managing a league, whether they're working at live events, whether they're doing marketing, social media marketing, broadcast journalism. So we want to make it very cross-functional. So we don't want to say just go on this track. There's so many different tracks to go on.
That's true, and I'm sure even in the next 5-10 years, it's just going to completely completely changed from where it is now, because we seem to
Yes.
really be on the front line of
Right.
of this new industry.
Right. You know, you think about like the whole internet boom in the late 90s, early 2000s. This is almost like that same type of boom where
It's
you
true.
don't know what's going to happen, and everyone's just so excited. And now you're starting to see, you know, colleges now having esport varsity teams and now offer scholarships too. So, you know, we don't really know where it's going to go, but we know it's moving forward. It's moving
going
forward
somewhere.
fast. So we said, let's get on this wave right now.
So are you the only program in the Northeast that has this program, or are there other colleges that offer esports programs?
We are the first in the country to offer esports
Wow,
management.
the
Yes,
very first in the
very
whole
first.
country. Wow.
Yes, you know, it was something that, you know, we looked at maybe about a year and a half ago or so. You know, when we're talking about esports, we have the #4 game design program in the world. And just with the context of where esports is going, we said, you know, how can we sort of leverage both of these? And so we started, you know, reaching out to people. It's not just cold calling. Say, we have this idea. You know, what if we did an esports management program? They're like, hey, that sounds really cool. So, you know, we really cold called literally to top esport folks. And they said, that'd be a great idea. This would be wonderful. So we said, okay, so if we were to start a program, what should we put in it? What should be included? What classes? Where are the skills gaps that you don't currently have in the whole, in the esports ecosystem right now? So it really just started off as just brainstorming for about 5, 6, 7, 8 months, and then we started sort of putting pen to paper, say, okay, this is a class, maybe this is a class, this is a class, and then, you know, after a year or so, it was like, here it is, we got it.
That's so revolutionary to be able, and so cool to be able to
Sure.
say I was a part of
Yes.
making this whole new program.
Yes.
So going back to esports a little bit, is it like there's the NFL,
Sure.
there's the NHL, is there an overarching governing body, or is that still
It's still sort
being
of
figured out?
Yeah, it's still sort of being figured out. It's not necessarily defined. So what it is, it's you have leagues, right? So you have these game publishers who publish certain games. So
Yes.
like League of Legends is one of the most popular
That's
games out
the
there,
big
right?
one, yeah.
So League of Legends, they hold their national championship, their Super Bowl. Then you have the other games that, such as like Overwatch, that hold their Super Bowl per se, right? And just about a year ago, the NBA. They started their own NBA 2K League, right? So now instead of being on a PC, which is traditional, they're going to a console, PS4, Xbox, and now they're doing their own, their own esports.
So it's multi-platform now.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was mostly computer before, and now
Correct.
we have different platforms
on
as well.
consoles, and now folks are thinking, well, how can we bring it to mobile as well, right? So we want to, as the industry, they say, how can we best leverage all the technology, just not on a PC platform?
Where do you think it's going next, which I know is an enormous question, and you couldn't, it's like saying in 1995,
Right.
what do you think the internet's going to be like
Right,
in
exactly.
3 years? So, but what do you see happening in the future for esports?
I just see that there's so much excitement around it right now that as this becomes more traditional, more mainstream, you're going to have a lot more eyeballs going to it. And in terms of the academic side of it as well, folks are going to say, well, I want to get into this. How can I get into this? Maybe I can't be a player, but I still want to be a part of it. So I think as we move forward in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, you're going to see more esports management programs pop up. Because folks are going to say there's a skills gap in the esports industry, and how can I be a part of that? So I think on that side it's going to start booming. And then in terms of just strictly advertising, once they start seeing these numbers grow, more and more advertisers are going to hook on. Right now, I think there's about 600 active brands that are sponsoring esports. Now, I would imagine that might just, I won't say double, but it's going to go a lot more in the next, say, just even 3 years from now, which is pretty exciting.
Absolutely, that's a huge growth in
Yes.
just a small amount of time, and what a great time to be on
Sure.
the forefront of it. Like I said, so what would you say to a student who is like, you know, this program sounds cool.
Yes.
Why should I take this major?
Well, I think because, you know, if you have that passion already for it, and you want a way to sort of operationalize that passion, not just sort of just play in your dorm room or play in your bedroom, but say, I want to do something with this here. Just like you have, maybe some athletes to say, I love playing sports. I'll never be an NFL player, Major League Baseball player, but I'll major in something like sports management to be a part of it, right?
Be a part of it,
So what we want to do is show them the different facets and different avenues on how they can be a part of it without being a player per se. One of the coolest things about Becker is because we have the #4 game design program in the world, then we also have what they call Mass Digi. So Mass Digi, it's a partnership between the public sector, the game sector, and higher ed. So that's another platform in which, coming to Becker, you're going to be insulated with the top minds of game.
Wow, that's so, I really just, like, it's almost hard to wrap your head around
Yes.
it, because you would, even 5 years ago, saying like,
Right.
I'm a professional video game player, people would have laughed at you. It's a very,
some still do.
Sure, it's a very interesting
Yes.
thing, but I guess you could say the same thing about sports. Like, I play soccer for
Sure.
a living is not a normal thing to
Right.
say, and I'm sure in the next 10 years or so, it'll be much more mainstream to say, I play League of Legends for a living.
Right. And it's so crazy because you think about it, right? So now it's just not, the fans and consumers looking at this. Right now you're having, major sports celebrities, right? So guys from like A-Rod to Shaquille O'Neal to Rob Kraft, right?
I was going to bring that up next, is he's been investing into
Yes.
the program. So do you see crossovers between professional sports and esports?
I want to say yes to a certain extent. I still think, LeBron's going to be LeBron over here, and the top esports players going to be esports players. We're not saying they're the same, but they're within the same type of platform in terms of media and in terms of entertainment. And that's a value that people are searching for, right? The more and more people are going mobile and they're going towards their screens, right? This is something that I think is going to attract a lot of folks, and that's why these sports celebrities are saying this is something real. This is maybe not traditional sports as you see it, but it's hardcore competition.
It
right?
is, and it's like you said, it's a lot different than just sitting in your basement with your friends playing
Right.
some video games. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot
Yes.
of work, and arguably just as much work as playing a professional sport.
Right. You hear about some of these guys. I just finished reading this book, Good Luck, Have Fun. It's about the whole evolution of esports, right? And where these pro esports players are practicing 8, 10, 12 hours a day, living in a house, and that's all they do.
Wow.
And the amount of money that they can make, I mean, this is the very, very top
elite,
tier.
of course.
So not everybody, but hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries, which is insane.
Absolutely.
But it's supported because they have so much money coming into it, because folks are saying, this is legit. So, so because it's legit, they're compensated pretty well. So it's very exciting times.
So as more I know you said more universities are getting to have their varsity esports teams,
Yes.
but how do these companies find them? It's because
Sure.
the NFL, they have their draft from the aggregation of all of the best
Sure.
football players
Yeah.
and things like that. But how do you find the best League of Legends player, the best Overwatch player? Like, where?
So in terms of those who want to turn pro.
Exactly.
Right.
We're talking the best of the best, World's Championships. What's their trajectory?
It's so like wide open in the sense that you have folks who are going to these competitions. They're making their name via like leaderboards. So if you're out there, they will find you, right? So, it's not like you got to sort of say, hey, look at me, look at me. It's like, if you're that good, you're going to show up.
You have a reputation.
You're going to have, exactly. So you're not that hard to find. And then once you get in this whole ecosystem, it's not big enough per se where they can't find you, right? So it's still, sort of niche in a sense, but it's becoming mainstream.
A growing niche.
Yes, a growing niche, yes.
So what's the typical profile of your pro esports player?
Wow, I think it went from someone who just was a a hobbyist enthusiast on the couch per se, right? So now they are truly hardcore, dedicated in the weight room, doing cardio, having their meals planned for them, having their practice times allotted for them, right? So it takes a certain mentality, right? So it just can't be someone, I just want to casually play and I only play when I feel like it. No, this is your job, right? You have to be here at these times, and if you don't perform, well, you're not going to be playing very long. So, you know, just take the same mentality of a pro athlete, but put it towards game. And that's that profile, right? Because everyone can play, but at that elite level, it's very difficult.
It's a lifestyle.
It is. It is.
And I read an interesting little tidbit when I was reading up on it this morning that said most of these gamers are in what you'd call a usual professional athlete window of the 18 to 25.
Yes.
Do you think that's just because gaming is more of a younger sport in general, or
Yes.
do you age out of it?
It was funny. I listened to this this gentleman. He was a pro gamer in the early 2000s, and he says typically you age out in your late 20s, just in the sense of, you know, there's so much time you have to give into it, right? So it just like a pro ball player, right? You sort of age out after a while. You can't do it like you used to do it, right? You know, it's that intense training, and to do that over a decade, that's a lot for almost anybody, except, you know, you're Tom Brady, right? You know, you can do it for what, two decades or so,
There's
right?
always the exception.
Which is crazy, right? But yes, it's you know, in terms of players, you know, starting in their teens and typically topping out into their late 20s, early 30s. Now, in terms of viewerships, the bulk of the viewership is between 24 to about 35-ish. And that's where you're getting so many folks going to screens watching these folks.
So the viewers,
Yes.
is this mostly people who are a fan of the game?
Oh, yes.
Or is it becoming more just people who watch because it's interesting?
I think both. I think, you know, if you've never seen it before, you're sort of like, what is this, right?
It's a lot to take in. Like I said, my roommates back in college used to watch it, and I'd sit with them, and it's a lot happening at once.
Yes.
You've got like dozens of screens and
Sure.
people plugged in, and
Right.
it's definitely a process. And if you don't know what's going on in the game, much like any professional
Sure.
sport, you get lost very quickly.
You do. And I think, you know, right now it was just on, they call the site called Twitch, right? You know, so you had to look for it. But over the past couple of years, now mainstream television is picking up on this, right? So now ESPN started broadcasting esport games.
Wow.
Turner Sports started broadcasting esport games, right? Because before, all these viewers were leaving cable TV and going online. Now they're saying, wait a second, come on back this way.
There's a market for it.
We will play this too, right? So now as this gets more towards these online channels, or these more mainstream channels, cable channels, you're going to see this, I think, have a bump, because folks are like, hey, what is that? And I'll sit down and sort of watch it, and I think some folks will get hooked, and some folks will be like, not so much. But I think more so than not, folks are like, this is really interesting.
It's really cool, and it's fascinating just to see what people are able to do.
Yes.
When you'd never think of, like, generally think like, oh, you know, video games, it's a fun way to pass the time, but this is a whole world away from that.
Yeah, I mean that you sounded just like my mother, like 15 years ago. What are you doing? You know, get off the video games, right? You know, because that was this culture of getting up, going out. But as technology is increasing, is getting faster, more efficient, you're seeing more folks saying, hey, you know, this is a new form of entertainment that's sort of foreign from past generations. Now it's just getting accustomed to, you know, people playing video games as a sport, right? As opposed to going out and playing a sport, right?
Well, any changes like that, I'd say, you know, well, that'll never catch on.
Right,
and
exactly.
now we have smartphones and the internet, and who knows where we'll be in 10 years.
Just think about it, right? Like, what, 10 years ago, what was a social media manager?
Exactly.
No one knew what that was.
Exactly.
Now, you need that. That's a must.
That's true. You're like social media strategist. Like, why should I have to strategize my MySpace page?
Right.
I'm just posting my favorite songs, but it's
Exactly.
it's truly taken off from there into the dozens of outlets it is today.
Right, and that's why we're just so excited at Becker to be the first to launch this program, to sort of almost help set the tone of where this can go.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, as first out of the gate, you really have that advantage of setting where it's going academically, which is an incredible advantage.
Yeah, and we're so excited because now as we're talking to more people about this and people are starting to sort of notice, hey, you guys are doing that, right? So, you know, so we started looking at talking with different organizations, looking for places where our students not only learn in-house, but can co-op somewhere and intern other places, because that's where you're really going to get that full holistic experience.
Absolutely,
you know?
until you do it hands-on, you don't really know what it's like.
You know it, but you don't know it, so that's why we want to make sure that we do this the right way. And I think we have all the pieces in place. They're all coming together. And there's just so much excitement. People reaching out to us. You know, I had one gentleman from Turkey. He says, hey, I heard about you guys. And this was only a couple days ago, right? A student. So,
wow.
You know, so word is sort of spreading, and we're just so excited right now.
Great. Well, we are, I'm sure, all watching with lots of anticipation to see where this goes. I could talk about this for hours. It's fascinating, but unfortunately we're running out of time, so I'll have to wrap this up. But thank you so much for joining us. That was truly enlightening. Yes. And I'm sure we'll all be fascinated to see where this new program on esports goes and what other colleges start to offer it. And so definitely someone to watch. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all for tuning in here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center here for Go Local Live. I'm your host, Rachel Nunes.